Hello there, and thanks for keeping us company on tonight's installment of the news, the 6:15 p.m. edition on Canal International. We're broadcasting live, as always, from our main production hub in Douala. First things first, though, the headlines. Here's Kejang Henry Atembe.
Tragedy strikes once more in the Mediterranean as a migrant boat sinks off Lampedusa, Italy, claiming the lives of 6 young Africans and leaving at least 40 others missing, including Cameroonians. Driven by the desperate hope for a future stolen by poverty, corruption and political instability in countries like Cameroon, the Ivory Coast, Mali and Gambia, amongst others, these brave souls risk everything for a chance at a life they were never offered at home. And at Maladen, a key hub for oil palm cultivation in Noon Division in the West region, farmers are facing a devastating crisis. Swarms of cane rats have ravished their plantations, attacking the roots of young palm trees and preventing them from growing. With no effective solution in sight, the situation is worsening, compounded by drought and bushfires. Farmers are now appealing for urgent intervention. And in sports, Cameroon's hope-defying campaign were dashed on Wednesday night as they were held to a goalless draw by a resilient Eswatini side. Considering their most recent performances, the indomitable Lions of Cameroon failed to impress, leaving more questions than answers. That was a summary of tonight's top stories. Stay tuned for full development in a moment.
Canal International. Canal International.
Thanks once again for tuning in, and let's continue claiming life this week. There was 6 young Africans, including Cameroonians. 40 others have been declared missing. The tragedy unfolded after a migrant boat capsized and then sank off the shores of Lampedusa in Italy. Here's Cynthia Latte with the details.
This week, the Mediterranean claimed more lives as a migrant boat sank off the coast of Lampedusa in Italy, leaving 6 dead and at least 40 missing, according to the United Nations. Among the victims were migrants from Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Mali and Gambia, fleeing poverty, political instability and repression. Obviously, despite the dangers, many young people continue to risk everything for a chance at a better life, driven by the failures of governance and economic mismanagement across Africa. Critics say leaders across the continent have clung to power for decades, enriching themselves while their populations suffer. Youth unemployment remains high, with few job opportunities outside the informal sector. As the wealth of nation is looted by corrupt elite, young people are left with no choice but to take deadly risk in search of a future abroad. The crisis of African immigration is not caused by traffickers or external policies, but by the failure of African leaders to provide opportunities for their people. Until they invest in job creation, infrastructure and democratic transitions, the Mediterranean will continue to be a graveyard for Africa's youth, victims not just of the sea, but of their own government failures.
And in the meantime, March 20 every year is commemorated globally as World Happiness Day. In Cameroon, however, observers note that finding happiness can be a tough cost of living. We're going to have Cynthia Latte once again. She reports that facing these struggles, happiness or joy becomes a distant and very rare commodity.
Challenged by degrading socio-economic and political context, Cameroonians opine. Due to the perceived proper treatment, you cannot be happy. You can talk about personal happiness for those who have the means to survive. Would say people can create personal happiness. For example, if I'm happy and you're not, how can I be peaceful? When you look at the living conditions, be it poor state of the roads, price hikes, unemployment, corruption, or tribalism, you cannot say Cameroonians are happy. All that surrounds us here is alcohol and fish, women, which makes Cameroonians feel like they are happy. Across the streets, many are in constant search for happiness, struggling to divert their attention to different activities away from problems plaguing their daily lives. Understanding what happiness truly is, psychologist Maurice Somo explains that while the feeling may be relative, depending on the moment and circumstances, it is still complex.
Et elle s'inscrit toujours dans un contexte.
There are events that create happiness in some but lead to disappointment and anger in others. In the current Cameroonian context, we must recognize that it is difficult given all we know about the pressures faced by youth and parents. Being happy in the country involves personal effort, and according to the psychologist, it entails how they act. Everyone can try to do everything that brings them satisfaction in their life. Each time they succeed in a project, it brings them joy. Everyone keeps struggling to find happiness. Cameroon ranks 104 out of 107 countries in terms of happiness index and stands 8th in Africa, behind South Africa, Guinea, Mozambique, Ivory Coast, Congo, and Gabon, and ahead of Nigeria and Senegal, according to the World Happiness Report 2025.
Now in Maladen, that's a key oil palm cultivation hub in the Noun division of the country's west region. Farmers say they are facing a devastating crisis. Swarms of cane rats are ravaging their plantations and farms, eating the roots of young palm trees and stalling their growth. Gladys Sambo now reports that the affected farmers are calling for urgent government intervention to prevent a shortage and scarcity of palm oil across the country in the coming months.
Maladen, a once thriving agricultural community in the Noun division of the West region, now presents a distressing sight: crushed and withering oil palm trees, victims of an unrelenting invasion. Cane rats, notorious for their destructive feeding habits, have spread across plantations, decimating crops and leaving farmers helpless.
Oil palm cultivation in Maladen faces significant challenges, primarily due to its elevated terrain, which is less suitable for this crop. Another major challenge is cane rats, which feed on the sweet roots of young plants, causing severe losses if not protected.
To make matters worse, drought and bushfires are further crippling agricultural activities, leaving farmers with dwindling options. Many say they are at the breaking point, unsure of how to protect their crops and sustain their livelihoods.
The dry season poses another hurdle, bringing bushfires and harsh conditions that slow growth and damage plants. While some branches may dry out, the plant survives as long as its core and main roots remain intact.
Local environmental officials are urging vigilance and collective action to tackle the crisis.
Residents should intensify agroforestry by planting diverse tree species alongside oil palms and preserving gallery forest, which supports biodiversity. They should also limit pesticide use, as agriculture in this area has become heavily dependent on chemicals.
As the crisis deepens, farmers in Maladen are looking to public authorities for urgent intervention. Without immediate action, the future of oil palm cultivation in the area remains uncertain.
Now let's engage the backpedals and move over to the Senate in Yaoundé, where members on Tuesday renewed their full confidence in Marcel Nyat Ndjifenji, re-electing him as their president, for the umpteenth time. In addition, the heads of the various Senate commissions were also elected and officially installed. Ate Bonaventure now tells us how this all came to pass.
The re-election of Senator Nyat Ndjifenji Marcel with 87 votes out of 90 confirms the massive trust that the 91-year-old politician enjoys amongst his peers in the upper house of Cameroon's parliament. It is considered as part of political continuity desired by President Paul Biya. The new Senate office will have to tackle several crucial challenges for the country this parliamentary season. For the 2025 legislative year, The CPDM scribe, a native of Bangante, is to lead the upper house of parliament, which represents the 360 municipalities, 14 city councils, and 10 regional councils. Prior to the election of the Senate Executive was the voting of the leaders of the 9 commissions that include the Economic Affairs Commission, Defense and Security, Foreign Affairs, and Education.
Let's stay at the upper house of parliament, and this time around with a focus on the importance and peculiarity of some of those commissions. One of them is the commission in charge of social affairs. It is led by Eno Emma. She spoke to Ate Bonaventura.
The Committee for Social, Cultural and Family Affairs is the backbone of our society because it treats matters of health, it treats matters of the family, it treats matters of social welfare, the welfare of Cameroonians. So it's a very special committee and a very important committee that looks into how the Cameroonian lives. Is he healthy? Is he comfortable? Everything really covers this. Is the family, the family of a country shows how the country is. So this committee covers a lot of areas. That's why we are a very busy committee.
Just tuning in, you're watching the 6:15 p.m. edition of the news on Canal International, brought to you live from Douala. Now, despite low pay, that's what they say, and harsh working conditions, nursing in Cameroon remains a highly sought-after career. And proof of that claim is the fact that on Wednesday, 1,000 state-registered nurses took their oaths right here in Douala and in the presence of Ndi Morin. Here she files in.
After years of demanding training, these new nurses pledged to serve with dedication and humility.
We are here today to take the engagement that we are ready to really practice what we have been learning. I am a nurse. I've made 3 years in training.
Falling as a nurse, and I'm so happy to have my certificate once.
However, the event also highlighted concerns. Many of the nurses expressed their expectations for better support and improved working conditions from the government.
I would like to work as a nurse in a renowned hospital. Our country has some difficulties. I don't know whether I would say difficulties in recruitment of nursing nowadays. So we have been dropping demands. There's some hospitals want us to do what they call perfection.
To do in the future is to improve healthcare, especially taking care of patients, giving them the quality care, and also going to specializations.
Their teachers praised their perseverance, offering valuable advice as they embarked on their professional journeys. Families expressed pride and hope for their loved ones' future in healthcare.
Perfection, they start telling you your salary. It is nothing but less than 50,000, never above that amount. But when I look at that amount, it is not worthy for a nurse.
Despite their readiness to serve, nurses in Cameroon continue to face significant challenges, including underfunded healthcare system, poor working conditions, and a lack of necessary resources. Many hope that the government will take action to support their vital contributions to the country's health sector.
And now, handling any radiological or nuclear utility is always a risky business that warrants the strict application of legislation and the necessary regulatory frameworks. It is on that backdrop that Cameroonian and American experts are drilling stakeholders in their own day with a focus on risk limitation and the upholding of best practices. Ate Bonaventure tells us more.
Since 2010, the Radiological Safety and Nuclear Authority has undertaken the revision of legislative and regulatory framework in the field of radiation protection with a view of aligning its text with international regulations in this area. The 3-day seminar aims to sensitize the public and users of radioactive elements on laws governing the sector and best practices in radiological safety.
Ceux qui utilisent ces sources de rayonnement ionisant dans notre pays ont intérêt Those using these radiological resources must be able to understand the stakes and what has changed as concerns the mission of regulatory authorities that is out to ensure legality in the sector.
Discussions are focused on how to protect people, property, and the environment against harmful effects of ionizing radiation.
The use of X-ray requires deep knowledge, be it in the utility or technical sense. We would like to be updated with the latest innovations and development in the sector.
To date, Cameroon has more than 500 radioactive sources and 1,200 workers, and the regulatory authority has a mission to carry out control operations and inspections intended to verify the application of radiation protection regulations.
And in sports, Cameroon's hopes of cementing their spot at the top of Group D in the 2026 World Cup qualifying campaign were dashed last evening as they were held to a goalless draw by Eswatini. Up next, and ahead of Tuesday's confrontation with Libya in Yaoundé, Kejang Henry Atembe looks at the stakes for the indomitable Lions.
A 0-0 draw, a result no one saw coming. The Lions, aiming to extend their lead, found themselves bogged down by an Estonian team struggling throughout the campaign. For Mark Breeze and his men, it was a night of missed opportunities. Despite controlling possession, the indomitable Lions lacked the cutting edge they needed in front of goal. For Estreni, this was their first point in 5 matches, a proud moment for a team at the bottom of the group. For Cameroon, it's more than just a draw. It's a wake-up call. Cameroon stays on the top of Group D with 9 points, but the gap is closing. Libya and Cape Verde, just 2 points behind, are ready to capitalize on any slip-up. The road to the 2026 World Cup is long, and the race is on.
And with that, we ask you to accept very fervent gratitude from the entire production crew for the privilege of your company. More news at 1950 with Alan Gisler and Kanga. But before then, the debrief with Lil Pijou. Have a great evening and see you tomorrow.
Canal.